Hi. In today's video, we are going to discuss about what exactly solution architecture in context to the Facets healthcare application. As we all know, in context to the healthcare sector, wherein by providing quality services for the patients for the treatment, against to that expenses, right? So at the same time, claim reimbursement, right? So all these things comes under the healthcare sector. Majorly in healthcare sector, there are two. One is provider, second is a payer. Provider, nothing but healthcare organizations, clinics, all that, who will provide healthcare treatment to the patients. Followed by this, excuse me, followed by this, when it comes to the payer side, payers, nothing but it can be a government agency, something like CMS, which is Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or else it can be a private players, private insurance companies and all. So these people will receive the claim reimbursements from the provider side, and subsequently whatever the necessary claim payments, releases and all, everything will be done by them. In this context, in context to the payer side, they use different core healthcare administrative applications, especially from the claim perspective. They use it, something like Facets, QNext, Health Edge, right? So these are the different applications they will be using. In this regard, there are different roles required in the field of healthcare as well as in IT, especially when it comes to the healthcare sector is concerned, something like business analyst roles who majorly focusing on migration projects, especially whoever is working on the migration side, when we are migrating from legacy applications to the new application, or else trying to understand the requirements from the beginning, wherein providing subsequent solutions and all, everything is what something which a business analyst do. This is where generally business analyst roles are, as you all guys know that. So whatever the functional, non-functional requirements, everything will be taken by them. In addition to that, there will be another important role, of course, which is becoming prominent nowadays, is called an architect role. Architects, nothing but people who develop solution architecture for the project. Because let's say we are developing an healthcare application, right? Right from the beginning, we are developing an healthcare application. Understanding the high level requirements, especially a non-functional requirement, because if you are providing a solution for the customer, even non-functional requirements should also be taken into consideration. Either it can be scalability, reliability, reachability, availability, load balancing, fault tolerancing. All these things has to be taken care of. It's not only about what features and what functionalities we are developing. Equally, we need to have a detailed understanding about how an application has to be developed and what technical roadmap a technical team should understand to develop the architecture. This is where generally the solution architect roles comes into account. But when someone wants to go for solution architect, from my personal advice, to have a knowledge over enterprise architecture will also be helpful, but there is no straightaway connect with solution architect to enterprise architect as far as the role is concerned. But people who wants to move towards the solution architect role, especially in context to the healthcare applications, and that too Facets, all that, having a knowledge over enterprise architecture will also be helpful to you, because enterprise architecture majorly explain about the enterprise of a particular organization where we are providing solution, wherein by understanding business architecture, right? The kind of business goals, vision, goal, mission, the kind of value streams they are following, right? So the kind of metrics they follow, the kind of competitors they have, the kind of organization structure, the kind of policies and procedures they follow, right? All these things comes under the business architecture perspective. When it comes to the systems architecture, what kind of systems they are using within the organization, this is all something comes under the system architecture side. They need to have a knowledge. What are all the different system configurations and all everything they are using to manage their applications, irrespective of the business processes they are managing, right? What are the business services and all, what kind of configuration systems required and all everything, especially from the healthcare point of view. There are some specific guidelines given by HIPAA, which is called Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This act will give you a clear guidelines for the people who are managing the systems and all everything are comes under that, right? This is where systems architecture come into picture. Third one, application architecture, means what kind of applications they are using. Let's say they are using Facets application for claim processing, subscriptions, etc., all that, benefit enrollment, all that. At the same time, they may be using some CRM application, either it can be Salesforce, it can be Dynamics, so that they wants to integrate with the core Facets application or QNext or Health Edge, whichever the application, right? So they are using, they want to integrate so that they want to know about the customer requirements, all that. Or else they may be needed to connect with some ERP applications, either it can be SAP ERP or Oracle related stuff, right? So there are some connectivities, right? This is where generally applications were interconnected. So if you are making any changes in the existing application, make sure in what way this application is connected with other systems, and if you are making any changes in what way that application is impacting. So how to minimize the risk. This is where to understand application architecture is required. At the same time, even data architecture, whatever the kind of data are we using in context to this healthcare data, I'm talking about healthcare data, how the data flow from one system to another system is all something which we have to know with. This is all something comes under the data architecture part. Okay. So what kind of database are we using, right? Database designing, that's all something as separate, but data flow I'm talking about. Especially this data architecture is majorly used when we are migrating from legacy systems to the new application and all. This is where majorly it is being used. One of the reason I'm saying, because data migration, wherein we have to migrate the data from old formats to the new file formats. Either it can be images, it can be videos, it can be documents, right? So it can be of files or whatever it was. So understanding our enterprise architecture is one of the key and prominent element. Being a solution architect in the healthcare is what something you have to know. So it's general in general, even for every solution architect. I'm not specifying this only for healthcare, but as in when I'm giving you an excellent example for healthcare, hence I'm taking this to you. Because Facets solution architect, hence I'm taking this example. So having a knowledge over enterprise architecture will be helpful for to become a solution architect. But most of the people who becomes from the solution architect should comes from the technical side, because solutions we may be given for a platform, or solutions we may be given for even for database side, or solutions we are given for applications also. Okay, so three different levels of solution architect. That's not something related. Let it put it aside for some time, right? So this is where solution architect roles are important. So based on the non-functional requirements, again, going back to the role of a BA, the business analyst is identifying some non-functional requirements, apart from functional requirements, features, all that. What are the non-functional requirements they have identified? Because performance of the application, how should it perform? Characteristic of an application, how should it behave? How should it act, right? How should it perform? So for that, non-functional requirements are important. So understanding these non-functional requirements by providing the right solutions in context to the solution, by understanding the high-level designs, low-level designs, right? So low-level designs completely about the kind of code we are using, the kind of algorithms we are using. At the same time, the kind of data structures we are using, right? So if there is any problem in context to the code they are using and all that, so what kind of design patterns we are using to to settle that defects we are there in the code, right? So this is all something which, being a solution architect, one must be good with. So people who are from the technical side, I would prefer, because a person having some technical knowledge will always helpful to migrate themselves into a solution architect role, especially in healthcare sector, face its application and all, which is one of the choice. But Second, even of course, some people who are strong enough in context to the technical side, knowledge over the application sometimes or the technical side will also come to this role. Okay, so this is all overall about Facets. I'm talking about solution architect role. Of course, in some organizations, it's not only a solution architect. We can call them as configuration analyst also. Configuration analyst means who configure the system, who configure the application. Because Facets application we are using for claim processing, claim adjudication, etc. in the payer side, all that in the healthcare sector. So how this is to be configured? To configure this existing application, healthcare application and all. So what kind of measures to be taken and all everything is what something one should be good with. Now, if we want to become a Facet solution architect, what kind of skill set one has to be acquired with, right? That's what something we are learning today. Now, because I think you got an idea what Facets solution architect roles are all about. Now, I'm going to explain you about what are the skill sets required. Okay, so what are the different skill sets required for anyone to become a Facets solution architect is what something we are learning today. Okay, so the first one, when it comes to the role of a, so when it comes to the role of a solution architect in the Facets and all, first of all, they should have an understanding about the configuration, setup, and maintenance. One is about configuration, setup, and maintenance. Right. So configuration, setup, and maintenance process is what is required. Because when we are configuring any application, any Facets application and all, how this is to be configured, what kind of configuration steps to be taken. So what technical infrastructure is required for us to set up this application. It's not only setting up the application, again, this has to be managed in regular intervals in future. So this is where generally this maintenance and all everything is what something required. That is point number one. Second, we need to have a knowledge over database, right? So it can be of any of the database, either it can be Oracle or it can be SQL Server, all that. When I'm going to teach this, usually, of course, depends on the requirement. Usually some people go for Oracle, right? So some people use SQL Server. Let's say, for example, if you are working on SQL and all that. So MySQL Workbench is what something we use to extract the queries, right? So organization to organization, this is something required. Okay, this is something happens, right? So Oracle SQL Server. So that sort of knowledge is also required. So this is also something, one of the key important element is required. At the same time, we must be having a knowledge over the cache database systems. Okay, what are the cache database systems are we using and all everything. So this is also one of the key and important element when we must be good with when it comes to the role of a solution architect when we wants to become itself. At the same time, we should able in a position to perform whatever the different benefits and medical definitions and all that. So we need to have some good analysis skills because whenever we want to analyze some healthcare data, right? So when we are going to work on the facets and all that sort of understanding is required here. So at the same time, we need to have a clear understanding over how these EDI transactions and all everything works here. So this is also important. So how these EDI transactions, right? So because electronic data interchanges, we call it as it's a EDI transactions because different codes we use, right? So 834, 835, 837, 271, right? So different codes being used. So different codes being used to electronic data interchanges because there are two. One is ICD-9 codes are different, EDI codes are different. ICD-9 codes like deals with procedure, diagnosis of the medical thing, medical procedure, all that will tell you, right? ICD-9 codes and all, 9 or 10 codes, all that. When it comes to EDI, electronic data interchanges, EDI transactions, like whatever the claim processing, claim adjudication, benefit enrollment, subscriptions, all these things are comes under this category. So understanding over EDI transactions is also required. This is also one of the key and important element being into architecture roles, solution architecture roles and all everything we must be knowing with. At the same time, we should have an understanding over the integration of, right? So we should have an understanding over integration of Facets application, which requires to reach the business requirements. Because end of the day, as long as if it was not reaching the business requirements, there is no point in working on it, right? So it's always preferable to have an understanding this. This is also one of the key and important element we need to be known. Next, we should know about the facets. What are the different batches we are using in facets? That also we must be knowing with. So facets, batches, and all everything. So that sort of understanding is also required. So to become a solution architect, all that. At the same time, we should have a knowledge over the facets data model, because from the data dictionaries, what are the data model we are going to create? Because these data models are useful when we are working on the migration projects. Again, I'm repeating. So people required some data models to create, right? So that is also one of the thing which we have to be good with. Next, when you talk about HIPAA, as I mentioned you, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So the gateway of HIPAA as well as EDI processing's gateway of HIPAA, right? So this sort of understanding is also required. Next, we should know the process of configuration and migration, because there are two things, okay? So one is configuration, second is migration and integration, right? So at the same time, integration part. Configuration, integration, almost one the same. Like migration means when you are migrating from in another sources to the new source, right? So this is where generally migration come into picture. When you're configuring means you're configuring the according to the organization, business rules, what we have it all, configuration will be taken place. When it comes to the integration means you're integrating with other applications. This is where generally the integration process and all everything will be majorly used. So configuration, you are configuring the application. Migration, you are migrating from old systems to the new system. Integration means existing application we are using and integrating with other systems. That's where generally we should have an idea. Next, as I mentioned in general, right? So as I mentioned you, we need to know about the principles of software solution architecture, solution architect principles we required. At the same time, enterprise architecture principles also, because an enterprise architecture in the beginning of the session I told you, right? So again, this is something consists of business architecture, application architecture, systems architecture, data architecture, all that. But when it comes to the enterprise architecture, in the field of IT, we use different enterprise architecture frameworks like Jackman framework we are using for a very long time, since ages. At the same time, TOGAF, right? So the open group framework, right? So one of the TOGAF framework. This is all something we used in the enterprise architecture side. So that is so if anybody wants to become an enterprise architect and all, so this is where something it is being used, right? So this is also something which we have to be good with, etc. All that. Okay, so this is also one of the key and important element we have to know it. Next, we need to have a knowledge over SOAP, because SOAP is nothing but simple object access protocol, right? So this is all something which comes under the web services part. Web services means, let's say, for example, yeah, right. For example, we are developing some healthcare application, some desktop application we are developing. We are developing some tablet and piece and mobile applications. We are, let's say, 3 different applications we are developing. So as far as the business logic to be implemented, so for all these three requirements, 3 applications, business logic remains same. Okay. But from the developer perspective, what they have to do, as these are the 3 different applications they are using, they have to create 3 different business logics, 3 different types. So which increases the effort, complexity, cost will also be increased. So for that, what we use, we create a web service. there are different web services like SOAP, UDDI, WSDL, right? So different things are there. So using this SOAP, UDDI, WSDL and all, we create some web service, and this web service given to the technical team. Subsequently, whenever there is a new application we are developing, make sure the same business logics we are implementing. So this can be used over there, right? So this is where generally SOAP, UDDI, WSDL, all these things are required. When it comes to the migration part, as we know, ETL process is required, because how to extract it, how to transform and load the data. So that part is required. So EDI transactions and all, everything are needed. At the same time, if you want to visualize the requirements, because if you want to being a solution architect role, when we want to visualize the requirements, it's always important for you to understand the UML process also, which is called unified modeling language. Because when the field of IT applications we develop to visualize the requirements, either if you want to create some use cases or sequence, at the same time, collaboration diagrams or class, object, component, deployment, state activity, right? So different diagrams being used. So to visualize the requirements, because if you want to visualize and explain to the team, so the technical team will understand better when they are working on. So this is even required. At the same time, we need to have a knowledge over RESTful API, because API is also important. Because to communicate between two systems and all, API is being used. In this API, somebody gives HTTP, SOAP API, RESTful API. So understanding API is also something, one of the key and important element, which being into solution architecture, one must be good with. At the same time, we must be having some idea over the configuration of right. So we must be having a knowledge over configuration of database objects, configuration of database objects, like something like tables or clusters, right? So at the same time, indexes, views, etc. Right? So these are all something which are comes under the configuration of database objects and all everything, right? So this is also required. Apart from that, as I told you, right, HIPAA rules and regulations will be required here, right? So if you want to evaluate any database configurations and all everything, this is also needed. So these are the major things which being into Facets solution architecture role, one must be good with, right? So because this is all something I can say, functional side of understanding about healthcare knowledge is required. So that is something which you guys have to be understood with, that is needed. Second, technical knowledge about API or web services, right? How this functions and works. I don't say that 100% hands-on experience always, because see, if you have a 100% hands-on experience, then okay, it's fine. But 100%, I don't say that everybody have, because fortunately, because in the industry, usually what happen, people whoever have functional knowledge may not have technical knowledge. At the same time, vice versa sometimes. So it's always better to learn technical knowledge. That's the reason why whenever I'm doing this, whenever I'm teaching this Facet Solution Architect course, right? So whenever I'm teaching now, what I'm doing is I'm giving healthcare topics first. Domain skills is functional skills required, because unfortunately some people may not have an idea about what is HIPAA. So what are the different HIPAA rules and regulations, and how different ICD and IDA transaction codes, right? So people may not have an idea. So healthcare topics has to be covered. That's what I'm going to cover in this. At the same time, we are going to cover about SOAP, EDI, WSDL, right? Understanding over web services, understanding over API integrations, API part, right? So understanding over the HIPAA rules and regulations, right? So this is also required. So technical knowledge, imparting about SQL, ETL process, at the same time, web services and API. So these are the major areas we have to be from the technical side. I don't recommend coding and all. If you have, see, any learning new things are additional advantage for you. So apart from this, having a knowledge over SQL is also something important, which I'm going to teach in this, which I'm teaching now in the solution architect role from Facets Healthcare application is concerned. this is required. At the same time, business analysis idea is also needed, because when we are trying to understand the business requirements, from where business requirements are coming from, that's where generally the idea which normally we need to have. So for that, I'm just taking some case study, as in when I'm doing for healthcare BA, Facets BA training, whatever I'm doing. The same way I'm taking even uh, some case study. So because different examples for different applications I cannot give, right? So it won't have a much discipline. So that leads to confusion to the people when we are working on. So that's all something which I'm doing. So now it comes to the Facets solution architectural and all. This is what something which skill set is required nowadays, and it's becoming important for any organizations, especially in the healthcare side. A solution architect role, somebody call it as configuration analyst, right? So different roles. This is what something all about. So people who are majorly from the technical side, it is being more successful, I can say, because some technical jargons and terminologies they will be knowing. At the same time, people, whoever is having functional side, can also plan their career towards this side, healthcare side, if anybody having knowledge, that is second. Third, people, whoever wants to transform their career transformation or job aspirants. So this is uh, one of the important and as well as lucrative roles in the field of healthcare. Nowadays, it's becoming more popular and important, right? It's becoming crucial rather than popular. I can always say that this is becoming important, because understanding solution, what kind of solution these architect roles are becoming important. So of course, that's what I'm going to teach, and this is what something which I'm teaching, right? So this is all about this session today. It's all about this video. So if you have any questions, please reach out to the contact details which will be posted in below to this video. Thank you.